Zenos and Fandaniel. These boys are going to be our main antagonists for the upcoming expansion Endwalker, as far as we know. A lot of people are pretty excited. I wish I could be the same, because deep down within me, I have in some ways some doubt that these two unbelievably thick and pretty boys are going to be our main villains. This video is going to be, I guess, my therapy session of talking about why I don't think that Zenos and Fandaniel are pretty much good villains, or how I feel like they're pretty hollow. Pretty much whatever, you know, I'm going to say is purely my personal taste, so do with that as you will. But how I'm feeling about this is mostly based around the recent patches, of course. So I'm just going to talk about each character and kind of just get my thoughts out there on why I think they aren't that interesting and my kind of hopes for what they achieve in Endwalker. Because I think they can be better. I really do. Before you get all mad at me, just remember, personal taste. If I have any interesting thoughts or you feel like I've piqued your interests, feel free to let me know in the comments below. I'm Mugen, and this is just my personal opinion. Oh, so of course, spoilers ahead for pretty much all the MSQ. If you haven't caught up, I suggest you catch up. So just to give a recap, I've been playing Final Fantasy on and off for quite a few years, and only recently, I guess in the past like 3 to 4 months, I have gotten a sudden burst of energy, especially making content for fun. I found that I've been playing it a lot more and more, and I finally caught up to the main MSQ. It was a joy, I loved it. But when I finished the most recent patch 5.5 Death Unto Dawn, I mostly found that now coming to terms with the realization that Zenos and Fandaniel are going to be our main villains, I couldn't help but be that excited. Don't get me wrong, I think that Natsuo Ishikawa is a great writer, and I think Yoshi P as a director and producer has some great ideas, and I think that they will nail pretty much everything they want to achieve in Endwalker. I have high hopes for them. But how they've presented and shown us these villains, I can't help but feel that maybe we've taken a step backwards. So I'm just going to go through my thoughts about Zenos first. So with Zenos, one of the things that I found with him, at least when we first met him, is that he had a great introduction as a villain. He was a character who came along and pretty much destroyed the entire Mugen resistance and bested us in battle, which, you know, we're the main characters. We shouldn't be able to be defeated. He pretty much, out of most villains, was the one who was able to achieve that, right? This is all great introductions for a villain. He's savage in a hot way. And more importantly, he's smart. He is ruthless. He has great power. Even to other characters who we may feel are on our level, he bests them in just an easy fight without even using a sword. These are all great introductions, incredible ways to learn more about Zenos. But as Stormblood went on, I felt more and more that he wasn't the main villain, even though he was going to be the final boss. I felt more that Fordolo and Yotsuyu were kind of the main villains of that expansion more than Zenos was. More for the reason that they were a product of their environment, and they kind of showed the effects of being someone who grew up under Garlean rule. Zenos is Garlean rule, but we don't really know more about him as we play. And that's not to say it's a bad thing, but it's something that I personally would enjoy, is learning more about him. Not even a backstory, just more about him and more scenes with him. The best scene, I would argue, that we've ever had with Zenos was, of course, at the end of Stormblood. I don't think I'm making waves by saying that. It was a great scene. It was a great fight. Him telling us that we are one and the same, that he also has this ability and power, the love to fight and not care about Doma, Alamigo, or Garlemald. To him, these are all just places. These things don't matter. And I love that scene because it was the first time that I felt a villain was trying to tell me as the player, you are no different from me. You and I are exactly the same. And he does say that, which I think is cool. And I've seen a lot of people talk about one of the reasons why they love Zenos is because, in a way, he is. Zenos is that player character that we could be if we had the choice and freedom in Final Fantasy Online to do whatever we wanted, to kill and murder and choose how to use characters or disregard them, just like he does. He doesn't form connections. We do. We engage with the world of Eorzea in a positive way. We engage with characters in a positive way. And we do play for fun. We do raids, PvP, and we do all these battles to test our skills in combat, all for fun and joy. This is a cool reflection of us, right? This is something that I think they should show more of in Endwalker. But the problem is that when he dies and commits suicide, he comes back. Now, we've had a lot of characters who have died and come back a lot in the Final Fantasy Online MSQ. And that in itself is a whole nother discussion or problem or something that you might like. But one thing I found with Zenos is that when he came back, I felt kind of upset about that. I think we all knew when we saw that katana wielding NPC that, yeah, that's Zenos. We don't know how he's alive, but he's going to be alive. I felt somewhat upset about that because I thought it ended so strongly. I thought that was a great beginning and end to an interesting character. One who we thought was refined and smart turned out to be just another crazy guy who was so powerful, the only thing he loved to do was fight. So by the time that Zenos regains his body, part of me feels that there is something missing. Some things have changed when he regains his body. His goal isn't to rule and find better prey. He realizes that we are the best prey. He wants to fight us again and have that moment of transcendence again when we fought in Stormblood. Being able to fight someone that you knew could kill you and you could kill them. An exciting feeling of competition. It's like fighting a rival, you know? It's an exciting feeling. Throughout the Final Fantasy MSQ, we've never really had a rival. There've been characters that we've been friends with on an equal level where they respected us, we respect them in so many different ways. But we've never had a rival as a villain. Most villains have either been ones that we've learned about over time of an expansion, then defeated, or we've been with and learned about them and then also defeated, whether we wanted to or we felt like we had to. Zenos is an interesting case because his only goal is to fight us. He doesn't care about anything else that's happening. He doesn't care. To me, that feels somewhat of a hollow goal because why do anything else of this when we could just fight and let it be over with? He knows that we could kill him and he could kill us. So why not make it a fair fight and just let it out? Just do a one-on-one and then let's end all this bloodshed. One of us will die. But clearly he just wants everyone to be witness to this fight, obviously. He wants it to be the grandest gesture, the greatest of plays, and the greatest battle to end the world between the two strongest people in the world, he and I. So this is where I kind of feel a bit underwhelmed, really. I always thought that was more to Zenos. And he does have a really cool way of how his mindset is mentally unstable, being a subject of anhedonia, which is a symptom of depression where you can't find pleasures in things anymore, the things that you would usually find pleasure in. So the only thing he has found pleasure in is fighting against us. That was the only time that made him feel happy and alive. I find his whole reasoning to just fight and defeat us extremely shallow. I'm not saying that compared to other villains, he is the worst. And I'm not saying that compared to other villains in the Final Fantasy series as a whole, he's the worst or the least interesting. I think there are a lot of bad ones that we could bring up that people have never heard of and most people don't talk about. But one of the things I do find to be one of his faults is that while he is someone who is insane to a degree and has had a childhood that made him this way, we don't really hear about it. And even if there wasn't a reason why he was like this, we should still interact with him and understand him more, or at least attempt to. I've found in media, and we'll get to this a lot later when I talk about Fandaniel, but anytime that we have a character in any kind of media that is insane and has some form of ideology, I always get a bit unsure that they'll actually bring it home when it comes to that character's arc. People love to always quote how much they love the Joker because he's insane, but he has his own ideology that he sticks to. You could put Zenos in one of these outer categories of being a mentally unstable villain because there doesn't have to be a reason why he's like this, and he may not even know why he's like this. And it doesn't mean we have to know exactly why Zenos is like this, but it does help us understand him more if he at least engages with us. Zenos, we haven't had a lot of scenes with, honestly. Most scenes that we've seen him in were with other characters, far away. We've been with Zenos only a couple of scenes, and he's talked about us so much, and we rarely ever talk about him or even think about him, compared to other villains like Emmett Selk. The amount of times we've talked about Emmett Selk after he passed away compared to Zenos after he passed away or when he came back to life, there's a large gap. So one of the things that I kind of hope for Zenos, at least in Endwalker, is that I want him to engage with us more. One of the things that I think would be a really cool idea is because he has the resonant, which is his version of the echo, is if he was able to communicate with us on a mental level. Imagine getting to a point in the story where you as the character has to go to sleep. It happened a lot in Shadowbringers, and that was always time to talk to Ardbert. What if when you go to sleep, you see him and he tries to invade your mind and tries to show you how similar you are? Instead of him trying to kill you so much, he has always said that we're one and the same. So why don't they show us that? We don't have to learn about Zenos' backstory. We don't have to learn about why he is the way he is. We don't need a sub story. We don't need to feel sympathetic for him. These are things that don't make a great villain. What makes a great villain is time with them. And I think Zenos could be an amazing villain if he could interact with us on a level that Emmett Selk did. People always hate hearing that Emmett Selk is everyone's favorite villain, and I'm guilty of being one of those people who love Emmett Selk. But if you disregard everything that makes Emmett Selk great, get rid of his suave personality, his boy status, his backstory, and the sympathy we have for him as his goal, right? His goal is a multi-layered one as well, might I add. I enjoy his goal. It's not simple, it's multifaceted. But if you get rid of all of that, why do we like Emmett Selk if we discard everything else? And you realize that we actually spent so much time with him because he wouldn't leave us alone. He had an ulterior motive, obviously, but that was a great way for the story and the writers to show us how similar he is to us. He won't waver in his goal, and neither would we. And that's how much we learn about each other. We learn how human he is. There are scenes where he comes and talks to us when we're achieving goals, and he's reminding us of all these things that he remembers. And he doesn't have to, but he did. And that's something that sticks with us. We remember he was a person. These are the things that I want them to do with Zenos. You don't have to humanize Zenos when he talks to us. He should make us realize something about ourselves or other characters. If he is trying to make us his best friend, our confidant, and still fight us by the end, why doesn't he tempt us? Why don't we be Anakin and he be the Palpatine? That's my best analogy I can think of. But seriously, why doesn't he tempt us? Why doesn't he try his best to convince us that we're best friends? We're his best friend and his enemy. So if we're rivals, then he should see it as a good competition to try and make sure that we are interested in him or we hate him. His goal should be either to make us love him or hate him. It'd be great for us as players to feel both. Oh, I love him as a great villain. I hate him because he's so awful. If we compare Zenos to Kefka, and I'm going to use the same comparison a bit when we get to Fandaniel, when you realize how much you hate Kefka and how much you hate him as a character, you realize how much you want to defeat him. You have that drive to want to defeat him. I don't have that for Zenos. He's done some awful things, but the things he's done, or at least influenced, doesn't feel on a grander scale. I've seen Emmett Selk hurt one of my favorite characters. I've seen Fordola kill her own countrymen. I've seen Nidhogg possess one of our best friends. I saw Elidibus use the body of one of our best friends to pursue his own goals and tempt those around us. These characters, regardless of how you feel about them, have had great influence on a lot of us. Zenos at the most kidnapped Kryl. He just used her to get a power. And you could say that that's still a bad thing to do. Not disagreeing with you, it is a bad thing to do. But it doesn't make me hate him. It doesn't make me want to kill him. I would love to have those scenes where we're walking and he's telling us what he's going to do to our friends. Imagine if he wants us to be so mad at him that he wants such a good competition that he's willing to kill our best friends just so that we give him a good fight. I think that's amazing. And it's fine if his goal is that. I don't think it matters that his goal is that, because I kind of also don't think that he's the main villain at the end of all this. We all still know that Zodiac is still yet to come, and Fandaniel probably has some ideas. Just to summarize for Zenos, these are the things I kind of want. And again, it's my personal opinion. Let me know if you agree, please. I'd love to know. But besides the memery and the images and, you know, the boy status that he has, I do think he could be a great villain. But at the moment, I still feel very underwhelmed, and the pool in which he's sitting in is pretty shallow. But I would argue it may not be as shallow as Fandaniel. Fandaniel is someone I actually dislike as a character. I don't dislike them on the level that I should hate a villain. I dislike him because I can't stand him. He has this air about him of trying to be a Kefka-like villain. And this is where I'm going to draw up some comparisons, and hopefully we can get to some idea of how he can be a better character. I realize this is all going to be a moot point because Endwalker is going to be releasing in just over a month at the time of this recording, but it's something I just wanted to record and have my thoughts on, because who knows what will happen, and I hope I'm proven wrong. I really do. And I think I might be, but still, I wanted to get my thoughts on here because it's something I really want to talk about. With Fandaniel, when we were first introduced to him, If you can remember voices pretty well, I think we all knew that Asahi was Fandaniel, or at least that he was an Asian now. And he has that body. I'll admit, Asahi was a cool villain. For such a one small patch, he was a very interesting villain because you thought no one could be worse than Yotsuyu. And he was. He was amazing. And he was a cool, I guess you could say, simp villain for Zenos. And I found him to be somewhat interesting. And then, you know, he met his end. But then when they brought him back, I'm thinking, this is going to be interesting. What are they going to do with this character who no longer has any life and it's just the body? And so introduce Fandaniel. We don't know a lot about Fandaniel. We know he's a sundered Asian who was under the orders of Elidibus and all the other unsundered Asians who are now gone. So what is Fandaniel's goal? And we learn it. It's the first time he meets us. It's an interesting introduction, at least to us. He just tells us all that he wants everything to die. He wants everything to be destroyed. He hates everything and he wants to die. It's a pretty good speech. And at the time when I was watching, I'm like, oh my God, this guy's insane. Like, this guy's really insane. We have two villains who are teaming up who are both legitimately insane than the other. I think that Fandaniel is an insanity that makes him think more about what it is that he wants to achieve as opposed to Zenos. These are clearly just two characters who are just using each other for their own motives, right? When Fandaniel mentioned that he can't be reasoned with or bargained with or made to see reason, I was really excited. I was really genuinely excited to see what he was going to do, but he hasn't, as of yet, done anything that made me think he's any different from any kind of standard villain who deems that they are insane and they have no reason, and they have no reason to try and defeat you, or they have no reason to believe that what they're doing is good or bad. They just want it to end. Fandaniel is not the most interesting, I would say, compared to Zenos. Zenos, I think, has a lot of potential. Fandaniel probably has potential, but nothing that we can really grasp on besides that he has Asian history, and that could mean a lot. Why does he want to die? We don't know why. We assume that he hates everything. And this is where I can compare him to Kefka. Kefka, at least in analysis of his character, because he's so popular, a lot of people discuss that one of the reasons why Kefka was so popular is because his hate for everything showed his lack of love for himself. He hates everyone because he can't love himself. If you don't have any kind of love, or how much little love you have, you're going to hate everything else. You see it in a lot of other villains who are just verifiably insane and only use hatred towards every character they come across. It's in all kind of media. But then you realize it's because there is no love towards them. They'll only show hate because of how much they hate themselves. It's only when a character in return hates them do they feel like they're getting some form of attention, and they compare that to love. Kefka having everyone hate him is probably the closest he'll get to love and admiration. Hence why he destroys the world, hence why he has reason to hate everything and enjoy suffering. Fandaniel seems to be a huge inspiration of that. And some would say also Kaju from Final Fantasy IX in terms of how he's a bit flamboyant, right? That just seems like a character trait. A little thing you can add in there to make him a bit more unique, right? The thing is, we've seen this kind of character before in a way. A lot of Final Fantasy characters have this thing called the Death Wish motive, where they want the world to stop in suffering, so their decision is to destroy the world to then redo it. It is a common Final Fantasy endgame trope in terms of battles. A lot of the Asians wanted to do it, but their reasoning was to create the world that they lost. And if you look through pretty much nearly every Final Fantasy, when you get to the end and you find out what the real villain's motive, because there's always a setup villain and not the real one revealed yet, you'll realize that a lot of them want to destroy the world to then start again. Final Fantasy X had Seymour Guado. He wanted to destroy Spira so that he could end the spiral of death. Everyone dead means no one can die. That's the motive and that's the mentality of the Death Wish. Fandaniel seems to have this, but not for any good reasons, just because he hates himself, or he hates everyone, and he wants everything to die, and he wants everything to be just wiped clean. The real question is why. I think Fandaniel makes him a bit different from Zenos, where it doesn't really matter why Zenos is the way he is. He just wants to fight us, and that's it. And that's his complexity, as close as we can get. Fandaniel, I think, needs some reason why he hates everything. Asians, up until recently, have always been one-dimensional villains. And I thought Shadowbringers was an amazing way to show us that all the Asians were people. They had motives, they had wishes, they had dreams, friends and loved ones. And the reasons why they were doing what they were doing was to bring them back. Emmett Selk had friends and family he wanted to see again. He wanted everyone to be how they used to be. You know, it doesn't make it any good, but he had his reasons. These are things that maybe make a good villain. Some would argue doesn't require to make a good villain. And I agree to an extent. I don't think, again, I'm going to reiterate, you don't need a backstory or sub story. But I think for Fandaniel, he has to be as multifaceted as the Ascians. Otherwise, he's just as boring as La Habrea was when we first defeated him. Just a guy trying to resurrect Zodiac just because. When we look back at La Habrea, we think, you know what? He's actually been more interesting because you realize there was a reason why he was doing it. But we didn't know it at the time. If we look back at La Habrea, maybe he's not as one-dimensional. Fandaniel, for me, is so one-dimensional that I can't help but feel there has to be more reasons why he wants to do this. What made him an Ascian? These are the things I want to know. I'm like, I would love to spend more time with him. We spend more time with him in the latest patches than we did with Zenos. And if we're going to have these two villains, we need to know exactly what they both want. And we do, but I guess I want more of an interpretation as to why. No sob stories needed, but I think if even Fandaniel came out and said, I don't know why I'm this way, but I hate myself. The things I've done, I hate myself. Or the things that I had to do to become an Ascian to gain power, I hate myself for it. He has all this awesome power and he could use it for good means, so why bad means? And I'd really just prefer it to be more than just I'm a bad guy. I think just adding one more layer of some reason why he wants to destroy everything will make him a bit more interesting. And again, have us interact with him. He's an Ascian. He can teleport anywhere and do whatever. So have him harass us because he's annoying. And I think it'd actually make me like him more if he annoyed me more. Fandaniel is somewhat entertaining to watch because he has an air about him, right? But if I don't really care too much about what he's saying or what it is he's trying to achieve, I'm not really going to care that much. When we first met Emmett Selk, I was actually thinking, oh my god, who's this guy? Is this another Ascian? And I'm thinking, who's this bad guy? But then the more he talks with other characters that aren't us, the more we learn about him. We learn so much about him. We learn that he has motives and that he has a way of saying and interacting with different characters and judging them and analyzing them. Why don't we have Fandaniel be like that? He has so much rage in him, but maybe let's see some certain things that maybe he has learned. It makes it seem like he's so much more powerful than any Ascian we fought before. He summoned a lunar Bahamut. So there has to be more to him than just this guy. And I think there is. I think Ishikawa has some ideas and I think she'll execute on them well. It's just up to where we are now. It does feel somewhat, where is it? You know, again, I'm very excited. I think I'm going to be surprised, which I hope I am. I actually think my main goal for when I'm playing is that this video be proven wrong. And I look back on this video and think, man, I had no idea what they were going to show me. Again, it's just my opinion. And I know there are some theories going around about how Zenos is heavily connected to Amarot and his connection to Zodiac and maybe that being his true prey that he wants to defeat. Fandaniel maybe being connected to Vanar. These are all exciting possibilities and theories, but I've never really taken stock in theories until I'm presented with a certain storyline path. I'm not really that kind of guy who looks and goes like, what does this mean? And I start theory crafting and drawing on the walls. I pretty much watch and wait and take what happens on screen as it happens. And then I can divert where this story is heading. I really care more about the arcs more than the big reveals or the big shocking twists. That being said, I wouldn't mind some twists. One thing that I definitely want these characters to do, above all else, is I want these characters to challenge me as the player. Similar to how Emmett Selk challenged me, similar to how the Dragon Song War challenged me, even Fordola. I look at Fordola and think I could have been that character. My character could have been like Fordola. I was betrayed so many times throughout all these expansions. We were, as players, by so many. We came out better for it. And that doesn't happen very often. I want to see, at least with the power we've gained, because as further we go in MMO, the power just gets higher and higher. And eventually it's going to cap. I want to see these villains challenge us to make us think that maybe we aren't the good guy, like how Emmett Selk made us feel like we weren't the good guy. Or make us feel as though we aren't so different from them. We have so much power and they are tempting us to use it in a way that we didn't think we should. I really want to be challenged. I would even love it. Okay, here's my biggest wish. I want us to fail. I want us to feel that feeling at the end of A Realm Reborn, when Nanamo was poisoned and we lost. I want that to be an Endwalker. I want there to be a period where we're near the end of the battle, we're about to stop Zenos and the others, and we fail. I know many people are probably thinking, oh, you just want an Infinity War ending? No, I really do, because people forget that's exactly what happened in Final Fantasy VI. If you haven't played it, Kefka literally destroys the world, and then you have to defeat him to restore everything back. That is something that I think would be incredible, and it'd be a great way to introduce some new worlds for upcoming expansions. You could do a huge retcon. I think having us lose everything that we've explored in Eorzea be gone to defeat these guys, that would make it feel like these guys are on another level, and that probably makes them a bit more interesting to me. But yeah, that's it. Those are my kind of critiques and thoughts of those two villains, and I really do hope they get better. As I said again, I want to be proven wrong. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And if you like the video, subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. I have a lot of fun making these videos, and it's been a joy to just talk about Final Fantasy stuff all the time. But anyway, my name is Mugen. Thank you for watching, and as always, have a good one.